Good afternoon. It's Wednesday, the 18th of April 2018, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish. With me in the studio, Mike Robinson. Where do we go?
Well, we're starting with Ofcom. Ofcom have decided that they're going to open 7 investigations into RT. The investigations form part, they say, of an Ofcom update published today into the licenses held by TV Novosti, the company that broadcasts RT. Until recently, TV Novosti's overall compliance, they say, has not been materially out of line with other broadcasters. Well, in fact, it's been significantly better than the BBC or Channel 4 or a number of other broadcasters. However, they say since the events in Salisbury, we have observed a significant increase in number of programmes on the RT service that warrant investigation as potential breaches of the Ofcom broadcasting code. We will announce the outcome of these investigations as soon as possible. In relation to our fit and proper duty, we will consider all relevant new evidence, including the outcome of these investigations and the future conduct of the licence. So there are seven cases, 2 against Sputnik, 2 against the news programme, general news programme, 1 against Worlds Apart, and 2 against Crosstalk. And this major degradation in RT's quality standards with regard to British broadcasting regulations apparently has only happened since the Skripal affair. A bit of coincidence, really.
Yeah, another one of those coincidences, but I'll just say, if people can't see by the time we've finished the news today where the British state is going, and that is an utter dictatorship with a close down on all forms of free speech. I'm not sure what we're going to do, but I think we've got some really fantastic information for you today. Now, we're going to give Veterans for Britain we're going to give them a big thumbs up and say thank you very much, because it's been pointed out to us that they've started to get some very crunchy material on their site about what is really happening to Britain's defences. And of course, all this is happening under the smokescreen of Brexit, as we say, Brexit without the exit. And the key point is that the European Union is rapidly assembling its unified military structure. That structure will include the United Kingdom. And of course, this is another one of Theresa May's big lies. There is no separation of Britain's military from the EU superstate plan. But what is happening very quickly is that the EU is desperate to take everything it can get. And I believe that Veterans for Britain is one of the organisations that is now talking about the great British military sell-off. Everything is being sold off or given away, whether it's working ships, capability or know-how. This is back to the Veterans for Britain site. This is one of their tweets. Encourage people to read it. It's got the same image, but the text is different for these 2 tweets. They're warning that the EU is desperate to take away Britain's laser technology. So no secret what's going on here in the background. And of course, many people have been saying that Theresa May is having these very, very dirty backroom deals, discussions and deals with the European Union, where she's delighted to be giving more and more of Britain's military capability away. And this is the jewel in the crown, and we understand that this is where the European Union are literally desperate. They want British aerospace railgun technology. This is a project that's largely been developed for maritime uses. Now, we know many people would say, why do we need to be developing all these systems of war? In principle, we agree with that statement, but if we stay with facts, we stay with the reality at the moment, the European Union is desperate to get hold of this technology, and Theresa May and the Conservative Party only too obliging, doing their best to give it away. So well done to Veterans for Britain. If you can get onto that Twitter page and have a look at some of their tweets, you'll be coming up to speed with what's really happening under the lie of Brexit.
Now this one I've called the war machine. We've got our illustrious Defence Secretary Gavin Williamson there, because he's apparently highlighting the importance of the government partnering and the Ministry of Defence partnering with charities. And He is committed, he says, to working ever closer with charity partners. And this was during a visit to the state-of-the-art recovery centre for veterans and service personnel. This was Tedworth House that he was visiting on Monday. This is a recovery centre run by Help for Heroes. So many of the people here have lost limbs as a result of military action on behalf of the British government. And this is a £24 million residential centre offering comprehensive post-rehabilitation programmes and life skills courses to help injured veterans, service personnel and their families lead active, independent and fulfilling lives. So what do we have here, Brian? A roundabout where Gavin Williamson sends military personnel off to other countries to have their limbs blown off by IEDs in possibly unprepared, insecure vehicles. And then they come back and we start this whole fundraising and government-sponsored charity work to rehabilitate people afterwards. In the meantime, many of these people being used as lab rats for the development of smart systems, prosthetics and so on, which is leading us down a transhumanist world. It's not a very good picture, really, is it?
It's pretty obscene, really, Mike. And of course, what we've got to remember is that a lot of servicemen and women have lost limbs as the result of IEDs. Where did the know-how for those IEDs come from? Well, of course, a lot of it came from Britain itself, that was pushing that technology, particularly into Afghanistan. So we've got these groups overseas trained by the British, and I've got to say, I really don't know how to phrase it, but if you follow it through, we've got British special forces in the past helping to train so-called guerrilla movements, we'll now say terrorists overseas, how to use this equipment, and now it's coming back to bite the British military. But of course, Help for Heroes, if I remember rightly, Mike, it was one of their trustees was the judge that put Royal Marine Alexander Blackman in prison. So very, very dirty stuff. Many people don't trust these charities, and I think I'm one of them. Combine them with Gavin Williamson and you've got something particularly unpleasant.
Yes, now this is a little infographic that the Ministry of Defence has put out about the Counter-Proliferation and Arms Control Centre, which was established in 2015 as a result of the Strategic and Defence and Security Review. It's apparently at the forefront of international efforts, they say, to counter proliferation. So why are we mentioning this? Well, of course, the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting is going on at the moment, and there are a number of announcements coming out of that. And the first is a new partnership between the Commonwealth and the Counter-Proliferation and Arms Control Centre. As you can see in that infographic, they're saying that they cover global controls on chemical, biological, nuclear, radiological, and missile and conventional proliferation. And this announcement, this joint venture, is on the conventional side only. So what they're saying is conventional arms control in the Commonwealth initiative will provide unique tools to Commonwealth countries to support national and regional implementation of measures to tackle the illicit arms trade in line with international obligations and standards. The Conventional Arms Control and Commonwealth Initiative will be delivered by the Commonwealth Secretariat in conjunction with the Small Arms Survey, a Geneva-based global centre of excellence on small arms and armed violence. It will facilitate the exchange of knowledge and expertise on measures to address the illicit arms trade, take stock of progress achieved in implementing international and regional arms control instruments and providing assistance on legal reform and legislative drafting. So that's all very good, isn't it?
Well, it's the usual, isn't it? This is Britain putting itself forward in the smart suits to tell the rest of the world how to do things, how to run your country, how to stop wars and terrorism, while in the background we are the people helping to stir this up and selling the arms. And of course, several people in our chat room today have said, well, of course, it's Britain selling these arms.
Well, exactly. So there you go. And Baroness Scotland, she, of course, Secretary General of the Commonwealth, she thought it was fantastic. Our member countries have expressed the need for assistance to help implement international obligations in relation to arms control. Yeah. Fantastic. In the meantime, the government and the Conservative Party apparently helping the Commonwealth stay safe online with £15 million for cybersecurity. So this is Treason May has committed £15 million for this, and she's announced this package on the eve of the formal heads of government meeting, which takes place today, where leaders are expected to agree the Commonwealth Cyber Declaration, the world's largest and most geographically diverse intergovernmental commitment on cybersecurity cooperation. Yes.
Sorry, I'm laughing in the background. I shouldn't do that.
I know, that's why I read this stuff out in this way, because it is hilarious. Cyber attacks do not respect international borders, apparently. Supporting other countries build their cyber resilience helps them prevent criminals and hostile state actors from operating online and targeting other countries. So that's fantastic. What did Theresa have to say about it? Our package of funding will enable Commonwealth members to review their cybersecurity capability and deliver the stability and resilience that we all need to stay safe online and grow our digital economies. Now,
Well, we're going to be having a look at digital matters in a minute, and I think people are going to be astonished at what the UK column is going to show them.
Okay, well, the point here is we've got to always watch the language, and it's this keyword resilience, because this is one of the globalist terms which is being bandied about, particularly by Theresa May at the moment. Resilient cities, resilient people, resilient organisations, everything has to be resilient because we live in this extremely dodgy world. Well, just by coincidence, because they make this press release from the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, and of course the mainstream media then has to put up a range of articles on the same subject. I'm not really going to comment on this Telegraph article. The headline is Britain's Armed Forces ill-equipped to deal with cyber attacks from Russia, a new era of electronic warfare. It's just there to reinforce the theme.
It is, although there's a twist in that headline, Mike, because the bit that is absolutely correct is the electronic warfare. This has come to the surface several times, that the Russians are steps ahead of the West in electronic warfare. There was an American general, I can't remember his name, but he described their ability as eye-watering. So what we've now got is the Russians using their own nation state to develop this, moving ahead. That's one thing, but of course the cyber is what can we pin on the Russians that's difficult for people to prove is not the case. We'll go for cyber.
Yeah. In the meantime, well, of course, the purple and green of common purpose is never too far away from the Commonwealth, and they tweeted this out this morning. Great to be introducing the open source leadership model to delegates of the Commonwealth Youth Forum this morning. Lots of discussion, and this is all about Commonwealth 100. Here it is on the Common Purpose website. Commonwealth 100 is a free online leadership program from Common Purpose that equips the next generation of 21st century leadership with 21st century leadership skills. Using an interactive platform, you will work with a diverse group of young leaders from across the Commonwealth to explore open source leadership, a new leadership model co-created with over 1,000 young Commonwealth leaders. This is your opportunity to gain practical skills for the future. What's more, everyone who completes Commonwealth 100 receives the Open Source Leadership Badge, an online badge you can use to set yourself apart as a 21st century leader. This is wonderful. I'm going to sign up, so I think I'm a bit old, but anyway, I'm going to sign up for this straight away. Commonwealth 100 is open to young leaders who may be either from a Commonwealth country or currently living, working or studying in a Commonwealth country. And what's it all about? Well, here's the outcomes. Produce a more socially conscious generation of leaders, create a network of young leaders, and this is the key point, create a network of young leaders in touch with each other, foster current and future global partnerships between young leaders, frame a fresh, bold, principled network Commonwealth of the future, and they're going to produce people that are awake, interconnected, accessible, quick and trustworthy. Isn't that fantastic?
Well, of course, the key bit is, Mike, that Common Purpose is still doing what it was always doing, which was behavioural change. This is creating leaders who have had their views and values and behaviour changed in order to meet the Common Purpose model. And this is the bit that is so dangerous. These highly vulnerable children and teenagers going on these programs where Common Purpose is interfering with the way they think. Effectively, it is brainwashing. It's always been brainwashing, and this is what makes it so dangerous. But of course, even though we had the massive exposure in the Daily Mail, the Times, the Sun, a little bit in the Guardian back at the start of Leveson, Britain's mainstream press, BBC of course never reported it, has completely dropped it as though Common Purpose has disappeared, when the reality is that the British government is pumping in even more money because this is applied behavioural change, and it's now being targeted at the whole of the Commonwealth.
Indeed, but it's been targeted at the next generation of
Yes.
leaders. So you know, what does Theresa May have to do in order to? She has to get through this next few years, while anybody that's over the age of 45, you know, eventually
left to wither.
Left to wither. The youngsters coming up that have had this training are going to be fully embedded with the ideology that certain people are living by. It's quite dangerous, but don't worry, because who else was Theresa May meeting? Well, of course, it's Bill Gates, isn't it? And well, he's talking about malaria and vaccinations and so on. Well, it's not just the Commonwealth that's talking about vaccinations. The EU is currently talking about mandatory vaccinations. There was a vote on the 20th of March. Marco Alfronte, MEP, who's Green Party, tabled an amendment in the Parliament calling on the Commission to elaborate on the guidelines defining conditions and criteria that can lead to a compulsory vaccination mechanism in order to have harmonised guidelines for all member states. Now, at the end of the day, that particular vote was lost, but tomorrow, on Thursday, when the European Parliament votes on the resolution on vaccine hesitancy and the drop in vaccine rates in Europe, that vote's going to take place at a plenary in Strasbourg. There is a very big possibility that amendment is going to be reintroduced. So I just wanted to draw people's attention to that.
It's frightening stuff. We'll bring in an advert for the NHS conference, May the 12th. Tickets are going now, so if you haven't got a ticket, you need to get in there and buy one. This is a unique conference about the NHS and healthcare provision in the UK. We're going to be able to hear from speakers who are not afraid to put the truth out, and they are certainly going to be challenging much of the British government line about what is happening to the NHS. The Tories say they're not privatising it, but of course many people say, well, that is a complete lie because the privatisation is nearly complete. But the subject's being covered a lot wider than just the potential for privatisation. People will be talking about wider issues in healthcare. And I'll just add to that, Mike, on the subject of vaccinations. This is so sensitive now within the NHS that a lot of NHS staff will not talk about vaccinations because if they do, they can lose their jobs. And we've had a test case running in the background over the last few months of a young man who refused to be vaccinated. He was at university to do physiotherapy. He didn't want to be vaccinated. What was the result? He was banned first from one university, I think it was Cardiff, and he's then been banned from every single university in UK, simply, excuse me, because he won't be vaccinated. But there is no law in place in the United Kingdom that makes it compulsory for you to be vaccinated. So dangerous, dangerous stuff. And of course, NHS people being told you can't keep your job unless, you can only keep your job if you are vaccinated, or you can't get a job with the NHS if you're not vaccinated. Dangerous stuff. Well, let's have a look at how the state is spying on us. And I've got to say a very big thank you to one of our viewers who alerted me to this Mail article. We've done as much work on it as we can in the short time before today's news. But let's have a look and see how it pans out. So the big headline, secret surveillance software created by ex-spies is harvesting Facebook photos to create a huge facial recognition database that could be used to monitor people worldwide. The headline is a lie because it's already being used to monitor people worldwide, as the article itself explains. FaceInt is said to contain the facial profiles of thousands of people worldwide. These were harvested from online sources such as YouTube and Facebook. Its creators say the software could lead to the identification of terror suspects. Remember that, because we're going to come back to that angle. The controversial service is causing alarm amongst privacy activists. Ordinary people are not worried about this, Mike. You've got to be an activist to be worried. So there's the spin. They say the database could be used to impinge on the rights of private citizens. No, it is being used. It also raises concerns in the wake of Cambridge Analytica data scandal. Mark Zuckerberg appeared before Congress last week to appease the US government. So there's a lot in the headline, there's quite a lot in the article, but we got a lot more out of it than the Daily Mail did. So here we are, secret surveillance software created by former Israeli intelligence officer is harvesting Facebook photos. It was revealed last month the company shared the private data of up to 87 million users with the political consultancy firm Cambridge Analytica. We've suddenly jumped from a few thousand, Mike, to 87 million as starters. Both companies have reportedly supplied the US government and its security agencies, including the NSA, with cutting-edge spy technologies. So this is some pretty dangerous stuff going on. We've got ex-Israeli spies producing software, hoovering up data they shouldn't be, and it's now spread across millions of people. Well, if we get into it, there's some embedded tweets where people appear to have been saying this is dangerous. I wasn't able to check this individual through, so I'm taking him at face value. But I've added the caption that the British public is just starting to understand the surveillance beast closing around them, because in this article we start to see how widespread and dangerous this really is. But let's come back to the meat of it, and this is the company which starts the story. This is Terragents. It says actionable intelligence the way you need it. And the interesting thing about this company, which produced the algorithms that could hoover up all the data, is that their own people are anonymous. So they're busy collecting images of individuals, millions of individuals in UK and overseas.
But they won't put their own faces
But
on?
they won't put their own faces up.
Oh dear.
And we're going to show why they won't now. So let's have a look at how this works. Here's Terragents. And Terragents was set up as a surveillance company. It was founded by Shai Arbel, a former Israeli secret agent. This gives you a lot of confidence, Mike, or maybe not. And FaceInt is the specialist application that they created in order to hoover up all of the faces. Now, this was taken over by a company called Verint. And I just had a quick look at some of their people. So we've got a Dan Brodner, president. We've got an Ilan Mariah, customer engagement, and an Elad Sharon as cyber intelligence solutions. There are some other people. I just chose those three to get some faces on screen. But of course, via this software, profile images have been taken from social networks, from YouTube and other sites to build not only a huge facial recognition database, but this is also looking at characteristics of who you are, what you do, how you think, how you behave, and what you buy. And remember that we're told we shouldn't be worried about this because these people only wanted to know whether we were terrorists or not.
Right.
Okay. So the private data of 87 million users, that's the minimum because that's the figure we're being told about. Are there more? Was then shared with Cambridge Analytica. And of course, Cambridge Analytica is an interesting company because they're in bed with the British government and they say they are working for data-driven behavior change. So immensely powerful stuff here, but it gets deeper and murkier. Here's Terragents, and they say that basically they were created in 2004, and it's made the hunt for terrorists on the internet one of its specialities. In its ranks are engineers, but mostly former officers of Unit 8200 of the Israeli army, specializing in new technologies and intelligence. Shai Arbel, CEO of Terragents, says that his company has managed on several occasions to find top-notch intelligence. In 2009, we had intelligence about the Nigerian mounted with an explosive device in a US plane on Christmas. We raised the alarm before it happened. So we've got Israeli military intelligence officers now running a massive surveillance program of UK and US citizens and citizens overseas. A little embedded article here, which we went and had a look at. We discovered it's in French, but we were able to just get a brief translation of this initial bit. What if Europe drew inspiration from the Israeli experience? So we've got a benefit from Israeli intelligence. The sun is shining on the facades of the office buildings that are rising from the ground in the new industrial estate in Nottingham. For 10 years or so now, this seaside resort, 20 kilometres north of Tel Aviv, has become an El Dorado for new immigrants, particularly French Jews, but also for high-tech companies who found that employees come cheap here. So you can get your cheap labour there, Mike. That's good. The company Terragence, a contraction of terror and intelligence, has set up its premises in a street prophetically named Computer Street in Hebrew. Founded in 2004, the Israeli company has made hunting down terrorists. We've been through that little bit. And here's Shai Abel, CEO of Terragence, former officer of this renowned unit, a 34-year-old of athletic build. He traded his Israeli Defense Force uniform for a business suit and a smartphone that rings every 10 minutes. We couldn't get into the rest of that article because you had to buy it. I didn't have time to do that. But we're getting a fascinating insight into a company which is now spying on everybody in the United Kingdom. Now let's come back to the UK column exposure about Francis Maud. This is going back to March 2014, and we pointed out that he had set up a memorandum of understanding on digital government with Israel without any consultation with the British public or any debate in Westminster. And what we were seeing was not only the British government and the Cabinet Office, but also GCHQ and British intelligence being linked into a collaboration with Israeli intelligence. And this was also including British universities. So when we've had accusations that British universities are full of apologists for Assad, we might get some flavour of where this policy comes from. Well, how can we connect these? Well, let's bring in Verint and Terragence. And what we find is that Terragence is boasting it was created by Unit 8200 of the Israeli military intelligence. And we know from Francis Maud that this was one of the key units which he said GCHQ and British intelligence was going to be fully linked with. This was a collaboration. So our question today is, when did the British public ever agree to Israeli military surveillance of their private lives? And I think if this report doesn't shock people, then they really don't understand how serious this is, because not only do we have the influence of Israel via Conservative Friends of Israel, Labour Friends of Israel, we can now show that the Israeli military and Israeli security services are spying and using data from people in UK. Serious stuff.
Now, Salisbury continues to get more ridiculous by the minute. Here's Keir Pritchard, who's the new Chief Constable of Salisbury Police, of course, saying on Twitter this morning, "Thank you, Salisbury, for your patience and resilience." Of course, as we mentioned yesterday, a number of sites in Salisbury which apparently still have to be cleaned up following the Skripal affair. Well, the Spire FM website, local Salisbury website, saying exactly that. Work begins to decontaminate sites in Salisbury, spy poisoning. But Brian, something jumped out of the page at me, smacked me over the back of the head. And it was this. Apparently DEFRA, the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, is the organisation which is leading the cleanup of a military-grade nerve agent from Salisbury, from 9 sites in Salisbury. I nearly fell off my chair. Is this the last time DEFRA was involved in a cleanup in this country was the foot and mouth disaster, but that was not a military-grade nerve agent. No human being's life was at risk These people, okay, they have some experience of dealing with pollution incidents, but this is not a pollution incident.
Well, Mike, on one hand, we can simply laugh at it. It is laughable. On the other hand, we can say, well, this makes sense because, of course, we had that it was military-grade nerve agent used in Salisbury. This was rammed into the press and media hour after hour, day after day, military-grade Novichok. Then we see that clearly the poisoning symptoms of the Skripals don't fit that label. So then we had, oh, well, it was a delayed action powdered form. It was then some form of delayed action jelly. Then it was clearly not military grade nerve agent. Now we can see that in fact it was even possibly some other form of poison, BZ. We're waiting for more details on this. So the story was fabrication from the beginning. So it makes sense to bring in DEFRA. And of course, what were DEFRA good at? They were getting people to drive their cars through pits of disinfectant and telling people that they had to take their shoes off coming in and out of farms. So I think DEFRA...
during the foot and mouth.
During the foot and mouth. Yeah. So I think DEFRA, absolutely ideal for the complete charade that is the so-called Skripal case. And we've already had Public Health England saying, well, for a military-grade nerve agent, you simply need to wash your clothes or send them to the dry cleaners. But I think by all means, bring in DEFRA. The pantomime is complete. Salisbury and the Skripal story cannot be true in the sense that the British government would have us believe.
Yeah.
It's fantasy.
So the question is, what was the nature of the toxic chemical? And as we mentioned yesterday, there is a meeting taking place at the OPCW today because the chairperson of the Executive Council had received a request, it's on the left there, from the permanent representative of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland to the OPCW to convene a meeting of the Council under Rule 12 of the Rules of Procedure. And basically this is a meeting convened to hear the report from the OPCW Technical Secretariat into their technical assistance visit to the UK and the outcome. So there has been no official announcement yet of what this briefing was. I don't know whether the OPCW is actually going to make an official announcement of what the briefing is about. That meeting is going on at the moment, but hopefully by the end of today we will have some idea of what the OPCW's official status is or official position is on the nature of the chemical agent that was used in this case. We wait to find out.
We wait to find out. Well, we're not going to get the story from the BBC. Just like to remind people that this gentleman, Mike Wendling, sent an email to Vanessa Beeley, and as you read out yesterday, a whole list of questions, which some of our viewers and listeners have said those questions sounded like an inquisition from this man, arrogant inquisition. Of course, this gentleman not likely to put his life on the line in dangerous war zones overseas, but he's very good at pushing people for information. I did have a look at his website and I noticed that there is at least one person that's effectively accusing him of bullying and harassing them, which is a very interesting state of affairs for a BBC employee. But what we thought we'd just do is have a look at some of the other journalists that attacked Vanessa Beeley. And of course, the start was really the Times of London. We called the Times today to see who the editor was for that Saturday edition that attacked Vanessa. And Mike, you were able to listen into the phone call. They told me that they have a no-names policy. So the switchboard of the Times of London said, no, we can't tell you who the editor is because we have a no-names policy. Wow, what a start to that little inquiry. So here's the No Names newspaper. It's called the Times of London. And they had a front page hit piece and several articles on a double page spread featuring Vanessa. Let's have a look at some of the journalists. Georgie Keat. If you have a look at her background, she's very big in local advertiser papers. She's been with the Times for 3 years. She looks very young to me. I'll give her a compliment. I think she is over 16, but she certainly looks very young. Doesn't appear to have any experience in the Middle East whatsoever. So Georgie, nice to see you getting stuck in on the basis of no experience whatsoever. Dominic Kennedy, now he's supposed to be more experienced, investigations editor. On his Twitter header, the word murder stands. I don't quite understand what that's about, but there he is sitting in his warm office with a cup of tea, but he's got guts to attack a lady, Vanessa Beeley, who's put herself at risk on the ground in Syria to report what's really happening. Let's bring in the next one. This is Christina Schweder. She's a data journalist, so she's certainly not going to go on the front line. She prefers to be sat with her laptop and a cup of tea and her dog. She's very keen on dogs. And we'll bring in Deborah Haynes. Now, of course, she's defence correspondent. She's very big on fun articles, going for rides in helicopters, being there surrounded by lots of young, fit men. She likes that side, but we haven't seen her on the ground in Syria yet. And this is the mystery man who they couldn't name. It's John Witherow. We understand that he was the editor of this Saturday edition, but remember the Times has a no names policy. And we bring in our Mike Wendling from the BBC. And I'd just like to put the caption in there: no risk character assassins working from warm carpeted offices. UK column has a share all the names policy, and we're pretty happy to do that with you.
Yes, so let's just remind everybody, media on trial taking place 27th of May in Leeds. Details on mediaontrial.uk, the website there, you can get tickets. Do get along to that, never more needed.
Okay, and we'll say again that tomorrow in Manchester we've got the New Chartist movement. If you don't know about the New Chartist movement, there's the website, newchartistmovement.org.uk. Have a look. This is about taking action and doing things, but of course all in a reasonable, polite way and certainly within the law. But do we need to take action to stop what's happening in this country? We certainly do.
Okay, now, Syria intelligence briefings used to manipulate MPs, Commons told. This is according to the Herald. And what are they saying? This is the SNP's Stuart MacDonald. He claimed that he was informed by several sources that the government had been selectively offering intelligence briefings from the Prime Minister's National Security Advisor. He said they appeared to have been offered to Labour MPs who are sympathetic to the government's position. He said these briefings appear to have been offered to members of the Labour opposition not on the basis of Privy Councillor status, but on the basis of those opposition members who are sympathetic to government position. This leads to concerns that the government is using intelligence briefings to manipulate Parliament and to bolster its own case for its behaviour on opposition benches, not on security terms but on politics. And he asked the Speaker of the Commons, John Bercow, if such an approach was correct. The Speaker took note but said, MacDonald said, "My point is you preside over a Parliament which the government has done everything to sideline since last week, and it's now been brought to my attention that they're using intelligence and security briefings to manipulate opposition members of Parliament, not to inform them but to potentially bolster their own case." Mr. Bercow said, sometimes in life a problem does not have a solution, and I think this might be an example. At any rate, if there is a solution, it isn't in his hands to provide it. So that's the allegation, and the question in my mind is, well, why would Theresa May be doing this? Aside from, I mean, is there any personal reason she might want to do this? Now, a number of organisations today have been asking this question as well, and have been asking the question: does Philip May, her husband, have any economic reason why he would be quite pleased to see her encouraging the use of weaponry on the global stage? So let's just remember, of course, who Philip May is. There he is on the left-hand side. He, of course, is a senior executive at Capital Group, a $1.4 trillion investment fund. Now, over the years, many people have made suggestions that Philip May and Capital Group have investments in G4S. I've never actually found any evidence for that. But so I was interested to know whether the claims today about shareholdings in defence companies were correct. So I had a look. And indeed, if we look at the top 5 shareholders of Lockheed Martin, for example, well, you can see quite clearly there. Oh, sorry. The second one on the list, the second largest shareholder is Capital World Investors. This is part of Capital Group. The same goes for BAE Systems. In fact, Capital Research and Management Company, part of Capital Group, is the largest shareholder in BAE Systems with 8.21%. And if we look at the share price changes since the 13th of April, well, that was the last day of trading before the airstrikes. We can see there has been a significant uptick in Lockheed Martin's share price. Slightly less significant, but an uptick nonetheless since the 13th of April in BAE Systems share price. It's certainly been bolstered. And so I think the question has to be asked, Brian, is there a conflict of interest with this lady and her husband's activities in the financial markets?
Well, there must be, Mike. There must be. How can you do this? Because your wife is influencing the policy for those arms deals and the arms company, and you're sitting in the background benefiting.
Yeah. Now you've mentioned the Times and the attack on Piers Robinson and Vanessa Beeley and Tim Hayward and so on. Well, today their target was Robert Fisk, who of course writes in The Independent, and their headline is "Critics Leap on Reporter Robert Fisk's Failure to Find Signs of Gas Attack." So because Robert Fisk has failed to find what isn't there, he is being attacked. It says opponents of Western military action in Syria seized on an account by a British journalist who failed to find evidence of a chemical attack in Douma during a visit to the city. Journalists taken into Douma by the Syrian regime on Monday were presented with conflicting accounts by those they spoke to, contradicting both the Russian position and each other. The Associated Press reported victims saying that there had been a chlorine attack and that they had been overcome by gas. Now they go on to admit that there was a situation in a hospital where people were being treated for smoke inhalation and that all of a sudden people with white helmets came in and started shouting "gas, gas," which caused panic within the hospital. And the next thing you know, other people that had stormed into the hospital were pouring water over the heads of the people that were receiving treatment for the smoke inhalation. Well, as Patrick and I mentioned on the Sunday Wire on Sunday night, this is a template of behaviour which we've seen going back a couple of years in other hospitals in Syria as well. But nonetheless, because Fisk was talking about this, he is under attack. The Times goes on to say Fisk's report was widely shared on social media by academics who support the Assad regime's accounts of the conflict, as well as others in the West sceptical of the rationale behind the Western intervention. They include Jeremy Corbyn for PM, a grassroots campaign behind the Labour leader, so let's get him involved in this as well, although they do say that it's not affiliated to him or the Labour Party. So this is another pathetic hit piece in the Times. And what interested me about this particular article, Brian, is that unlike most of the article, in fact, just about all the other articles on the Times, this one was not hidden behind their paywall. This is one of the few articles that they decided should be available to the general public for free.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a few people have commented on that while it was on screen, saying it's amazing that he has failed to find something. He has failed to, yeah. Desperate times for the press.
And we'll just end on a reminder for AV9 taking place 4th to the 7th of May, Horde House Hotel near Milton Keynes. Details on alternativeview.co.uk. There are no residential tickets left, no rooms left, but there are some day tickets available if anybody wants to come along. As I say, alternativeview.co.uk for details of that.
Excellent. Where do we end? I think we should say a lot of information in UK column news. Please help us to spread it out there. We can see the censorship net closing in. How long will we be able to carry on our broadcast? We don't know. Russia today certainly being targeted. Anybody else who dares to challenge the government's line will be targeted. And as we've shown very clearly, Israel at the centre of spying on individuals within this country. No mention of that on the cyber attack angle. What can we do about it? let's report the information and facts. Let's challenge the journalists themselves. It's journalists that write stories, not the newspapers. Get onto their Twitter pages, challenge them, but of course in a polite, reasonable way, because that has most effect. Please don't sit at home worrying, doing nothing. Action conquers fear. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow at the same time. Bye-bye.
Bye.